The Weather Channel's continuing coverage as we track Milton is ongoing all night long to keep you informed. As long as you have power or you have access to our streaming app, you'll be able to watch us. And we're going to stay on with you for the duration of this storm to make sure as many Floridians as possible have all the information they need to get through it safely. Good evening, I'm Justin Michaels. I should say good morning, I'm Justin Michaels. It is the early morning hours here in Orlando, Florida, and more than 2.8 million customers are without power across the state of Florida. Important to note that is millions of people, probably more than 10 million people would be my guess if you multiply it out. So a lot of people are going through this night into the very first day after the storm, which is coming for many people as it is filtering across the state and pushing out into the Atlantic. We're seeing some dramatic live images coming from Cape Canaveral and Daytona Beach, where the east coast of Florida is getting pummeled right now and hammered by the rain and the wind because of this storm. The good news is, though, as the storm is pushing across, we're seeing a little bit of clearing here in Orlando. We have some rain falling now, but I can assure you, you'll see more clearing than rain going through Orlando as you watch our live shots throughout the course of this morning. And also here in Orlando, at least, by and large, the power is on. You can see down this street, this is the Thornton Park area. People have power. These are not generators operating all these lights. This is actual power in this city. So far, the city beautiful, which is Orlando, is doing pretty well indeed compared to many other places. Luckily here we didn't have tornadoes go through, where much of the state south of us and to the east certainly had tornadoes. This storm has turned deadly. That's the worst thing we can ever tell you about any kind of tropical weather or any weather in general, is even if one person dies, that's one too many, and this storm certainly has turned deadly, and it still has a long way to go. As far as issues over on the coast, we know there was more than 10 feet of storm surge in some places down near Sarasota, Siesta Key, and of course more detailed measurements and readings will come in with the light of day and getting people in there to better understand what exactly happened as that water is flowing out. So Milton, a very impactful storm, an historic storm as it came across the Gulf, and now, Carl, going across the peninsula of Florida, causing a lot of problems. But again, Carl, looking at any silver lining we can find, any positive note we can find, Orlando, just using this one city as a guide, is doing pretty well as we go through these early morning hours. Carl, into you.
All right, Justin, thanks so much. And we want to show you what's going on with the storm right now. It is now an 85-mile-per-hour Category 1 storm, moving towards the east-northeast at 16 miles per hour. That's the update from the National Hurricane Center. So slowly but surely, it is a weakening storm, albeit a hurricane, as it makes its way towards the coast. Still looking at some very heavy rain in northeast Florida and still some gusty wind. It's been difficult to sort of get our arms around what's going on with the wind because a lot of the stations have been knocked out. You notice where it says calm there in Leesburg and Zephyr Hills. There are many other stations just like that, whether it's because of instrumentation or power being out. Whatever the case, we're just not getting those readings. And what we do know is that on the backside of the circulation, which is about in there, some of the strongest winds have been the winds that have been coming around and out of the north. And on the backside of the system, that was when we saw winds gusting over 90 miles per hour there in the Tampa metro area. And so there is concern about what will happen in Orlando as that center of circulation comes by and we start to get into that north wind there. But again, we're just not seeing a lot of reports right now. One thing that we can do is look at a model forecast, and the model forecast indicating that there may be a narrow ribbon of some stronger wind that comes through over the next hour or so into the Orlando metro. So maybe the winds step up a bit, getting up to around 50, 60 miles per hour at times, gusting that high, and then that's going to make its way over to the East Coast, the Space Coast, and begin to move offshore. Looking at what's going on with the rainfall right now, we're still seeing some fairly heavy rain across the northeast part of the state. It's thinning out in the western part of the state, but there is an ongoing flash flood emergency north of Tampa. There you see the terrific amount of rain that has come down here in the last 12 hours. We've gotten more than a foot of rain in some areas and some very serious reports of flooding, evacuation there in Bel Air Bluffs, and also water chest deep in Plant City at the Holiday Inn. So it has been a very tough night in the western and central part of Florida. Ray, just a lot going on here across much of the state, but at least things are now beginning to slowly improve.
Yeah, and from west to east, that'll continue through this morning. And by sunrise, the center may actually be back out over water. And that'll be a good thing anyway for many people. But there'll still be some lingering effects. And let's get you caught up on what some of the things that have happened. And unfortunately, the Weather Channel has confirmed that Milton is a deadly storm. The St. Lucie County Sheriff says there's been, quote, loss of life after a tornado in the Spanish Lakes community. Milton made landfall, but emergency management officials are warning residents that the danger is not over. They're urging people to shelter in place and continue to watch out for hazards. At this hour, a curfew is in place in Martin County due to extensive tornado damage. And, you know, the tornado outbreak may be one of the marks of this storm. Certainly not going to forget about the wind and the flooding rainfall, but an unusual number of tornadoes, or a higher number of tornadoes than a typical system. And then once again, that's why we always say we don't really compare systems, one hurricane to another, because they all have different features. Milton did make landfall near Siesta Key, Florida as a Category 3 hurricane at about 8:30 Wednesday night. Meteorologist Mike Bettis shows us the scene an hour north in Tampa.
We are tracking Hurricane Milton for you tonight. It is moments away from making landfall here on the west coast of Florida. I'm Mike Bettis out live here in Tampa, where it is rain, it is wind, and relentless on the northern side of the eye of Hurricane Milton. Rain will be relentless. It's been raining hard like this for about 2 hours. We probably have somewhere between 4 and 6 more hours of heavy rain to go. So on the northern side of the eye right now, and it is relentless wind and rain, and at times those gusts, they last literally for just a second, like that right there, and then they'll back off a little bit, and then you get another big wind gust that comes in. This will be the nature of it over the next several hours, right? But it's the rain, non-stop rain at this point. Hurricane force winds extend out about 35 miles from that center, so as windy as it is right now, imagine what it's like right at the eye wall. 650,000 customers have already lost power here in the state of Florida. You think about the high population center that's hitting, that's almost a foregone conclusion that the numbers are going to go up with the wind that we're getting right now. It's a sideways rain at this point, and the power outages have been increasing. Just sometimes you get these gusts that just last for seconds, but they really are hammering. Whoa. Whoa. It's literally almost like standing in an extreme thunderstorm, and you do it hour after hour after hour. Debris that's flying through the air. That would be pieces of trees, generally speaking. The hurricane itself is beginning to weaken. You wouldn't know by what we're standing in right now. We're still really in the heart of it at this point.
All right, our very own Mike Bettis there on the heart of the wind in Tampa. And here's some strong winds to a potential tornado here in Fort Myers. Check this out. Yeah, you can hear that wind whipping and trees getting kind of hammered around here. And, certainly reports of a possible tornado Wednesday afternoon in this area. And again, I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, unusual, or at least a high number with this storm of tornadoes, a high number, especially in that kind of leading area of rain and thunderstorms that came out late yesterday morning and yesterday afternoon. And, you know, not only a combination of that, but also the actual wind from the hurricane when it made landfall continued to take power out. And I'd imagine we'll continue to see more power outages as the morning progresses, as the numbers continue to add up here. We've been going up over the first couple of hours that I've been on the air here. We've added almost 200,000 customers. 2.8 million customers plus, leading the way the counties that have been most affected. Pinellas into Hillsborough County, 500,000, 400,000 there. Manatee even coming in at 226. So power out for many. And obviously with landfall, 8:30 Eastern time, right around there. You can see how Milton increased the power outages through the night, and it's still continuing. We want that number to kind of steady as we go through the next few hours, and the winds are starting to back down as the storm continues to weaken, but still there's the potential for some hurricane force winds here through the early morning hours before we watch the center move offshore. And by sunrise, the center may be offshore, but still some gusty winds potentially to tropical storm force through the daytime hours in parts of north central Florida. Rain, well, it's continuing to taper off in this flash flood warning area here on the back side of the center now, which is going past Orlando, but heavy rain further north as you go north on 95. Daytona Beach, rain and wind, and some of those gusts have been to minimal hurricane force. Saw a 75-mile-per-hour gust just a bit ago. And again, the tracker showing the counties in red, 50,000 plus customers without, near Sarasota and Fort Myers and Naples, even near Tampa. And then near Orlando, you're talking at least 40,000 plus customers out. And though our own Justin Michaels is in the city of Orlando, we're not seeing much power out there. You got to remember, you got a pretty decent sized county, right? And it's not just a one area we're looking at. Now, as we mentioned, through 4 o'clock this morning, the center trying to continue to push east and eventually offshore here, maybe by 6, 7 o'clock. And then the rain continuing to diminish. And by late morning, you may be done with the rain element of it, but still continue to have some gusty winds, Carl. Even on the backside, and after most of the rain and the flooding element diminishes, we may be seeing gusty winds, potentially the tropical storm force.
Well, let's go to meteorologist Paul Goodlow to show us what things look like in Sarasota, Florida after Milton's landfall.
Hurricane Milton made landfall this evening around 8:30 local time, about 5 miles south of us in Siesta Key. But we actually had the eye wall, had a calm for a little while, and now we're dealing with the backside. But before we got to the calm, we had heavy rain, then very light rain, but the winds kept ramping up and up. 90-plus mile-per-hour winds were batting this area. We kept seeing flashes in the sky of green and yellow and blue from power lines and even transformers and even power substations arcing with all the wind blowing on through there. Then the calm of the eye, and then the backside came through. We were closer, actually, on the water. And on the backside, we're expecting that surge to come in, and it did. And we had to hightail it to higher ground here in this neighborhood. But you can see the back edge is no walk in the park. Winds here still have been gusting well over 80 miles per hour. You can see some of the tree damage. Don't know whether it came before or after the eye came over. Big, huge branches up against the garage here. But also, this is the reason why we don't have power in this area and many neighborhoods here across Florida because of Milton's winds. Large, beautiful, old-growth trees, but you see where the power lines are, some of the phone lines and cable lines. That is why the winds hitting the trees, hitting the power lines, arcing together, causing things to black out. And we're very curious to see what happens in first light tomorrow, how bad the damage is, and also how high the surge was. We have to remember, just 2 weeks ago, we had damaging surge from Helene come through here. We even witnessed several boats still on land that were pushed there from the surge from Helene. So curious to see what happened after Milton. Again, this area had a storm surge warning, a warning for higher surge than Helene. We do know the daylight that comes will bring the hard reality of the third landfall of a hurricane in Florida so far this Atlantic hurricane season.
So we've got an ongoing flash flood threat in parts of northeast Florida. Here's a look at the latest warning for the Orlando area. Lake Seminole, Volusia counties under warning until 4:30. 5 to 9 inches of rain has come down here in the Orlando area and farther northward up into Daytona Beach. Looks like the rain is definitely thinner there in Orlando for the most part. The worst of it is now along that I-4 corridor from Daytona Beach and on westward. And then farther northward, heavy rain also coming into northeast Florida up towards St. Augustine, getting towards Flagler as well. Eventually we'll see that into Jacksonville. This is a look at the model forecast. So the center of circulation working offshore. We've still got these heavier bands driving down into northeast Florida. That's going to continue for the next few hours, and then by the time we get towards sunup, that starts to move offshore. Winds begin to settle down some. most of the heavy rain will be offshore, still some lingering showers, but not nearly the same level of threat by the time the sun comes up. High risk for flash flooding, but that's going to be more confined to the northeast part of the state going forward. Also, storm surge flooding is an ongoing concern. 4.4 feet of storm surge flooding in Fort Myers, 1.4 in Naples Bay. Here we see farther northward, storm surge into parts of northeast Florida. That's going to be an ongoing worry as the winds continue to howl out of the northeast and into the northeastern part of the state. So, a lot of these values are no longer going to be a concern as the winds are beginning to settle down out of the west and northwest there. But we do have an ongoing worry for 3 to 5 feet of storm surge flooding there across the northeastern part of Florida and then also into southeast Georgia and southeastern parts of South Carolina. So ongoing worry with an ongoing onshore flow there in the northeastern part of the state. We're going to have much more on this dangerous storm coming up here in just a few minutes.
Yeah, that's the sound of Hurricane Milton as it slammed into downtown Tampa Wednesday night, bringing in damaging winds and flooding rainfall. Right now, it looks like you escaped the worst of the surge. It all depends on where that center goes, and it went just south of you, putting you on the more favorable side, on the west side of the storm. Certainly, though, impacts being felt with power out, and we'll see when the sun comes up what kind of damage we did realize.
Boys here. Oh my god. Oh my god. My boys here.
Yeah, let's watch that again there. That's a transformer exploding, blew during Hurricane Milton in St. Petersburg. As, the storm came in, we saw plenty of this, and typical, especially when you get these stronger winds, hurricane force winds. And now we're starting to see some of that wind move into Orlando. Luckily, the storm's weakening, though. Our correspondent, Justin Michaels, is with us in Orlando, Florida. And, Justin, we're hoping for the best. Looks like at least in where you are. Now, we know that's only one point in the Orlando metro area,
right.
But, power's on. Rain's coming down hard, but it looks like you're escaping most of the strongest winds anyway.
I'll tell you, Ray, and again, to your point, this is just one part of Florida. Still, we're getting close to 3 million customers without power across Florida. So don't use Orlando as a guide that this is how things are. It is here that the power is on. Thankfully, for the people who call this place home, for many of the guests who are here, remember, a lot of people escaped the coast. They evacuated from West Florida, the west coast of Florida, to come here to take safe haven. And so far, I've got to say that was a wise move for anybody who did that, because the power has been on consistently in downtown Orlando all night. Looking off here, you can see it is a ghost town, this beautiful city. It's called the City Beautiful. That is Orlando, Florida, and we really don't see anybody moving around. Of course, that's a function of the time of day it is. It is the middle of the night or very early morning hours, but also the fact, and we can say very confidently, most people did heed the warnings and stay in. We're not far from I-4. I promise you, if we went over to I-4, you probably wouldn't see a car on it. And a typical day, even at this hour, you would see plenty of cars on I-4. It's one of the busiest stretches of highway in the entire country. So people are heeding the warnings. And Ray, so far, and again, we have to pinpoint the downtown Orlando, the city part of Orlando. So far, so good. I know, Ray, not far from here, there are plenty of power outages. Not far from here, there is flooding. Not far from here, issues are different into the county. But downtown Orlando, Ray, I've got to say, I'm sure Mayor Dyer is going to wake up today, if he's not awake already, saying, you know what, we made it through another one. Ray, into you.
Yeah, you know, Justin, give me a little bit on what do you think so far, at least from where you are, what's been the worst that you've seen? I mean, have you seen at least water and some maybe minor flooding? Has it been the wind that's really gotten your attention, at least the worst for that part of Orlando?
Right, so as we went live earlier, Ray, several hours ago, I'm sure you saw some of our live shots where the wind was quite intense, and we were still in the bulk of that convection from the storm. We were in all that really hurricane energy coming through this part of Orlando. That quickly tapered off as we got to, I guess you can describe better than I, but potentially whatever was left of the eye, that calmness kind of at the middle of the storm. I don't think the eye was intact at all at that point, but whatever was left of it, we entered that, and it really calmed down quite a bit. Now we're getting the wind again. In fact, I mean, you can see looking off, I mean, blowing the opposite direction it was this morning. The wind is certainly carrying that rain pretty rapidly through the streets. So we are experiencing that wind again, Ray, but nothing like what we saw earlier. And I will say another thing we noticed as we were over near Lake Eola. Remember, there are lots of lakes that speckle this entire part of Florida, and really much of Florida has lakes. The lakes here in Orlando, they can control their depth, and over the last several days, they dropped the depth down to the lowest possible point. And truly, Ray, we could have walked Carl on the lake bed in Lake Eola. Those lakes are absolutely filled at this point. So, Carl, the steps they took to lower them were definitely beneficial, because otherwise they would have been well over their banks. Carl, into you.
Hey, Justin, you were asking about, when that stronger wind would come in. We are now getting winds gusting to 60 miles per hour in Kissimmee, which is just to your south, also now gusting to 76 in Daytona Beach. So I think this is the beginning of the period of strong wind on the backside of the system now.
Okay. Hey, Carl, in fact, let me just do a little representation of what the wonderful thing about being behind a building is. We're protected right now, okay? Follow me. Let's walk out here, and you'll see things will change pretty substantially as I get out here. Are we talking about 60-mile-per-hour winds out here? No. But the winds blowing through Orlando right now are certainly picking up. The Weather Channel's back with more live coverage right after this. And right on cue, just like Carl and Ray have been talking, the backside of Milton as it's coming through Orlando was likely going to bring some wind, and gosh darn it, did it not bring some wind. We've got some really intense winds coming through here, and the big concern about these winds, where we haven't had this issue so far in downtown Orlando, could these winds that are fairly powerful when the gusts come through, could they knock out power? So far, downtown Orlando does have power. You can look around the plaza here. We're right at City Hall. Power is on. Let's hope it stays that way. I can tell you, just in the last 10 or so minutes, as this wind really started to build and kick in, we're starting to hear alarms around the area. Alarms being set off likely by the wind, and they're setting off those alarms in different people's buildings. So this is the time where you really need to just be prepared for the potential for power outages here in downtown Orlando. That's not to say that much of Florida, Central Florida especially, going across from, this is the worst wind we have seen all morning when it comes to this hurricane going through Orlando at least. So remember, we're still talking just shy of 3 million customers without power in the state of Florida because of the wind and the rain and the issues caused by Milton. The backside winds are certainly stronger than the front side winds we were dealing with earlier when we first started our live shots at 1 o'clock this morning East Coast time. So just be prepared. Remember, flashlights, not candles. If you are going to implement a generator that is not connected to your home, make sure you're venting it as far away from your home as possible, because we do not need to add, Carl, to the death toll of this storm by people who might die of carbon monoxide poisoning because of those generators venting inside. Carl, again, you said the winds would come, and they certainly have. Into you, sir.
So, Justin, do you have an anemometer on you? And if you don't, can you estimate the wind out there? What's your guess as to how strong it is?
I mean, I would say, again, I do not have my anemometer with me. Shame on me. You can give me a red X on my test later. But I would say we're probably dealing with 25 to 30 mile per hour winds right now, maybe sustained. And there have been a few gusts that have really kind of made me hop. They've taken me off my feet for a moment. So that's strong enough that it's going to certainly have the potential, Carl, to break branches for sure, potentially bring trees down. Remember, the tree system here, some of them are quite shallow, the root systems, not to mention we have highly saturated soil. It's not going to take much to bring trees down, which always increases dramatically the potential for power outages.
No doubt. Justin, thank you so much. We appreciate it. And we are getting some reports now of some very impressive wind from around the area. Kissimmee has been gusting now to 61 miles per hour. We knew all along that on the backside of this area of low pressure, there would likely be much stronger winds, but we haven't been able to see what the wind was doing west of the center of the hurricane, because a lot of the stations have been knocked out. But you can see right in there, gusting to 61 in Kissimmee right now. Wind gusts at 33 in downtown Orlando, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a higher reading coming in. Then look at this in Daytona Beach, gusting to 84 miles per hour. We've got very heavy rain there, and that helps to transfer the momentum that's aloft down to the ground. And you're also getting wind coming off the water, so no friction. So exceptionally strong wind now into Daytona Beach as we continue to look at the shot there in Orlando. So here's the model, and the model, I think, doing a pretty good job of showing what's going on. There is that fierce wind. You see that lighter color that's coming into Daytona right in there. Here's the wind that's wrapping around the backside of the center of circulation, which is now nearing the coast. So that's going to come through over the next 30 to 60 minutes, and then it's going to begin to move over towards the Space Coast, and things are gradually going to begin to improve in Orlando as we get towards 5 to 6 o'clock in the morning, if not sooner. And then that strongest of wind will work offshore, still looking at a surge threat with a northeasterly flow coming into the northeastern part of Florida. Ongoing concerns about very heavy rain. There's an ongoing flash flood emergency in Hillsborough, Pasco, and Polk counties until 4 a.m. Just a crazy amount of rain here from Tampa and along the I-4 corridor. That is more than a foot of rain in many spots. There was an evacuation near Clearwater earlier this evening, and also we got a report of water that was chest deep at the Holiday Inn in Plant City. So it's been really tough. Also an ongoing flash flood warning for Daytona Beach, Lake Seminole, Volusia counties under warning until 4:30 in the morning. And we'll have much more on Hurricane Milton coming up in a moment.
As Milton pushes across the state of Florida, Orlando is feeling the backside of the storm right now, and some of the truly the worst conditions we've experienced here since we've been covering the storm live for you since 1 o'clock this morning are coming through the city beautiful Orlando, Florida right now. In these early morning hours, you can see the palm trees over there on the plaza are certainly blowing. We're not talking about anything catastrophic, but we are talking about some of the worst conditions we have seen. I will tell you, some of the gusts that come through are strong enough, they'll kind of make me hop a little bit, and it does get quite intense pretty quickly. The rain coming through right now, coming with the wind, certainly is enough to sting your face. So we're talking probably 25 to 30 mile per hour sustained winds, maybe a little more than that, and gusting well over that because it will take me off my feet just for a split second. So definitely the powerful winds from this storm on the backside that Carl and Ray have been forecasting and talking about and trying to figure out, meteorologically if they were there. They certainly are. We have verification of that. And the concern now is though Orlando proper, the city, has gotten through this storm with power so far, and you can see behind me, definitely, we're at full power. Is it going to stay that way? Remember, wind can absolutely knock out power. Wind and rain just compounds that because the ground is so saturated from how much rain has already fallen that it's not going to take much for trees, for branches, and for power lines to come down. So just use extreme caution going through the rest of this morning into the day, because there's nothing to say that even though Orlando has been lucky so far when it comes to power outages, that we're not going to add to the numbers across the entire state. And speaking of those numbers, we're north of 2.8 million customers without power, pushing up closer and closer to nearly 3 million customers in Florida without power. So let's hope Orlando doesn't add to those numbers. But with the winds as they are and the storm pushing through, it shouldn't surprise anybody if that does happen. Let's hope it doesn't. So as people are waking up, and they're waking up early morning right now, trying to say, hey, what's the day look like? What happened overnight? These winds are some of the worst we've seen. And I know you and Carl have been looking at these for the potential coming this way, and they certainly are coming through Orlando right now. Right into you.
All right, Justin. Yeah, and the wind gusting, at least at the airport, 54 miles per hour. And I think that's what you experienced there. But as you said, the power's not out, but the rain's coming down, and no reports of flooding in the area. Have you seen anything, at least in downtown Orlando, there's any concern for flooding?
Right, we went to some of the hot spots, Ray, for flooding. We really moved around trying to give you some evidence of that, and the good news is we couldn't find any. Some of the lakes are very high, and the city did what they could to lower those lakes down to the lowest levels possible. They can control their depth, and they did that. And the good thing is they did that, and the water level came right up to where it would start to flood. So the city did exactly the right thing. And here are some of those intense gusts right now, Ray. I can't say that that's 50 miles per hour, but it might be getting close to it. So definitely the worst of Milton as far as Orlando is concerned is probably coming through right about now. Ray,
yeah, all right, Justin. Well, stay safe there. It looks like probably not too much more to go as the backside now coming through. But the damage done, and as Justin had mentioned, now we're talking about approaching 3 million customers without power, and it's kind of interesting an observation. We had stuck at around 2.4, and then we went through kind of a rural area. Then the wind started to pick up, getting closer to Orlando, and that number started to go up once again. And now we're at 2.9 plus and counting. And that's customers, and a customer is a household. So you got to imagine multiple people in a household. Hillsborough County still leading the way, 508,000. But down near Sarasota County, 236,000 without power. So plenty of power outages. Probably more to come here before we start seeing less in terms of wind and less in terms of rain and flooding, which could continue to take power out in the region. And as you expect, the crescendo here is right around when we have landfall, about 8:30 p.m. And as you could see, the power outage numbers going way up and continuing to climb the 50,000 plus range here. And as we said, 2.960 and change. And that's because we're right into the core of some of the hurricane force winds. Most of these 74 plus mile per hour winds with the gusts. We've seen that 80 plus at Daytona Beach so far, 50. I've seen some 60 in and around Orlando, 60 mile per hour gusts, but not sustained, so that's a good thing. But offshore, as we go through the morning, at least the center, but still as we go through the day, even through the evening, there still may be some tropical storm force winds left over, and that's still 30, 40 miles an hour with a weakened root system in many areas with the heavy rainfalls we're seeing here right now. It wouldn't be too much or wouldn't take too much to actually bring additional trees down. Trees could fall onto power lines that are above the ground, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the good news here in our flash flood emergency now on the backside of the center, starting to see the rain lessen. So the rain is starting to become less of an issue, at least falling from the sky. But it is more of an issue up here where we've got flash flood warnings and very heavy rainfall falling around Daytona Beach. And as I mentioned, here's your power outage tracker. For your counties in red, that's where 50,000 plus customers are without power, but a lot of central, north central, and even down toward southern parts of the state, at least some customers without power. But as I said, in Orlando here, you can see 40,000 plus in the county are without power at this time. The center continued to move offshore through 4 or 5 a.m. and then eventually out over the Atlantic. But still, as we said, not only some rain left over by 8 o'clock in the morning, but could be some gusty winds, still potentially to tropical storm force. And then as we go through Thursday, we'll watch the lows sweep away. Still some lingering showers, but as we get into the afternoon and the evening hours, certainly Milton less of a threat.
I'll tell you what, we're experiencing some of the worst winds we have experienced here in Orlando as Milton is coming through. The backside of the storm is really producing some extraordinary wind. I know Carl and Ray have been tracking that and expecting it to happen, and it is now coming through Orlando, Florida. The wind is pretty intense right now, I will tell you. We are probably definitely sustained well over 40 miles per hour, maybe getting close to 50 right now. We can see some first responders coming through right now. Not quite sure what they're going to right now, but we're always grateful for our firefighters and our police officers. So wherever they're going, whoever called you, help is on the way. We have seen some arcing of power lines. We've seen the bright flashes in the sky. So far, downtown Orlando has power. Now, I want you to note, as you look around my live shot, the one thing you don't see are power lines. They're all buried. So that certainly is helping downtown Orlando remain with power, Carl. But still, we are seeing the arcing, and we are seeing the orange and red flashes, and also the purple and blue flashes. So there are definitely power issues presenting around the area. Also, Melody Taylor, producer behind the lens there, she's already, for the first time tonight, beginning to see reports of flooding in Orlando. So we're going to track some of those down. But I will tell you, Carl, you said it was going to come, and it has. The wind is really, really whipping through Orlando right now. Carl, into you.
Yeah, Justin, it's pretty amazing because we have seen some of the strongest wind with this event on the backside. That was the case certainly across a lot of west central Florida and now into Orlando itself. Getting a report right now of winds gusting up to about 60 miles per hour in Kissimmee. So that seems to be certainly aligned with what you're experiencing right there. Justin, thank you so much. And let's take a look at the radar picture right now and show you what's going on with the storm. The center of circulation is now moving over towards the Space Coast, right about in there. So winds are going to get a little quieter as that moves in. You notice that winds on the back side of the system are very strong in some areas. Daytona Beach gusting to 78 miles per hour. And then there's Kissimmee gusting to 61 with a sustained wind at 48. So, you know, again, that is aligned with what Justin was telling us. Now gusting to 49 miles per hour at Orlando Executive. It was difficult to figure out what was happening farther west because we were losing stations, whether that's due to power being out or just the instrumentation actually failing in the wind. That's pretty typical when you've got a big windstorm like this. You start to lose data, and then it becomes more difficult, especially in a data sparse area to begin with, to figure out exactly what's going on. But what we did see in the modeling was this stripe of stronger wind on the backside of the low there, and that is indeed what is coming through right now. So that'll continue to move through over the next hour to hour and a half, making its way then over towards the Space Coast and the northeast coast of Florida very early this morning. Things beginning to improve rather dramatically in Orlando after that point. Ray, over to you.
All right, Carl, thanks. And, check this out. I got some incredible video here, an up-close video. Yeah, that's a tornado. That's like something you'd see not in the tropical system, but maybe out in the plains. Power flashes. This one crossing a highway here, Florida's east coast Wednesday. And this was actually pretty early in the day relative to landfall. Hours before, Milton never even came to the west coast. This is in St. Lucie County, where the sheriff says multiple people died in the tornado and many homes were destroyed. One woman who survived shows the reason why we tell you to take shelter in the most interior room of the lowest level of your home. Watch.
We sheltered right there. Okay. And as you see, this wind came through here. If Michael had not grabbed that door and closed it, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. My cats were in there. It's really loud. The wind picks up like you just know that it's more than 100 mile an hour. It's just it's a huge loud roar. And when it gets to that point, you know you better get into a safe place because it's going to destroy everything in its path.
All right, pretty amazing. Yeah, that's why we tell you, interior room, get to your safe place. That was a part of a tornado outbreak produced by Milton on Wednesday. All right, let's take you now to Glades County, west of Lake Okeechobee. And you can see damage from another tornado spread out across this highway. Yeah, just seeing here and just seeing the number of issued warnings. I think a record for the state for any given month. Unbelievable. You think Florida, you do think severe, but really it's more like the lightning capital of the U.S. more than anything else. But not only that element, but now the rain's becoming a story, and some of the rain's been heavy, almost 1.5 feet in many spots. And as you can see here, 12.5 inches just north of Lakeland, so just over a foot. But this is where we'd seen some 17-inch plus total. So a good rainfall forecast here with some of the heaviest rain coming down and producing flood warnings and flood emergencies. A lot of those now probably going to be expiring here as we head towards sunrise. But as you can see around St. Pete, probably approaching a foot, and now probably exceeding that with the additional rain that has fallen.
We appreciate you staying with us live here on the Weather Channel as Milton continues to push across Florida. I'm Justin Michaels. I did decide to don my helmet and also glasses right now, only out of an abundance of caution. The winds here are certainly strong enough now on the backside of the storm where things and building material can certainly be flying around, and I care about my brain and head. So we'll keep this on until, yeah, right, see, that's what I'm talking about. This is the worst wind we have seen from this storm throughout the course of this morning. On the front side of the storm, we certainly had a lot of rain and a lot of powerful wind in the overnight hours, but then we had a little bit of a lull as we went through whatever was left of the eye. Certainly not an eye, but whatever was left of it. And now we're on the backside of the storm. Every bit of 30 to 40 mile per hour sustained winds here whipping through Orlando and probably gusting 50 to 60. I can tell you the gusts when they come through make me hop a little bit. They take you off your feet. So if you're considering going out right now and you're in Orlando, I wouldn't do it right now. Give it a few more hours until these winds die down. You'll notice the power is still on, and that is a kind of a rarity as you go across Florida from west to east coast. But nearly 3 million customers are without power right now. But here in Orlando, downtown Orlando is not too bad. You can see the power is on, and it's on mostly across the whole city. There's one of those gusts that takes you off your feet. You don't want to have to deal with that. So as you plan out your day and any recovery activities you may need to do in this part of the state, definitely give it some time. Wait for the sun to come up. Wait for Milton to push off. Another issue, we are getting some reports in Orlando of flooding. An apartment building in particular. Our producer, Melody Taylor, went to check that out. We'll get some reports back to you on that. She's checking it out as we speak. The lake levels in Orlando are very high right now. But the good news is, before this storm, they lowered all the lakes by multiple feet. They have now filled back up again, but the city knew exactly what it was doing in lowering those, because if they wouldn't have lowered the lake levels, of course they would have flooded and caused problems for businesses and homes and everything else. So again, the worst of the weather that we have experienced wind-wise is coming through right about now, I would imagine. I know earlier tonight, Carl, there was a 74-mile-per-hour gust at MCO, that's the international airport, but I'm not sure what you're seeing right now with all the technology you have, but I'll tell you what, Carl, you were talking about those winds coming through, and they certainly are. Into you now.
Yeah, Justin, we are seeing winds gusting to 61 miles per hour just to your south in Kissimmee. I'm curious, are there a couple of buildings on the street there? Because sometimes when the wind gets in between buildings, can actually kind of squeeze it and make it come through even more quickly.
Well, it is pretty open down here, Carl. In fact, let me show you something. There's a building that our photographer, Austin Anderson, is standing behind. Let me walk up here and get out of this wind. And if I get close enough to the camera, no wind at all, or barely any wind as it's kind of whipping around the corner. When I go back there, it's a very different situation. Actually, I'm going to stay over here because there looks like there's an awning that's about to let go. So yeah, Carl, definitely the winds. It's amazing how much they've picked up. That awning just started letting go. I wonder if that's going to go here in a moment. But anyway, as far as the wind tunnel you were talking about, I don't think that is much in play where we are. These are very wide streets. This is a very open plaza where we are. So this is pretty indicative of the powerful winds that are coming through here. I don't think they're being funneled too much, if at all, by the buildings, Carl.
All right, Justin, pretty amazing scenes there. We were, wondering just how strong that wind would be on the backside of the storm, not having any observations for a while. And sure enough, continues to be very healthy. Justin, thank you so much for your reporting out there. And let's take a look now at what's going on with our storm. That center of circulation now making its way to the east coast of Florida. And all night long, we've been observing very strong wind on the backside as the center came past the Tampa area. Winds were gusting well over 90 miles per hour. And now we're beginning to see much stronger wind in Orlando. But this is part of the problem. All these stations that are, between Tampa and Orlando basically went offline. And whether that's due to power or because the instruments were actually damaged in some way, that's pretty typical when you've got a hurricane for that to occur. But what it does is it leaves you in the dark in terms of what exactly is going on. But we knew that there had been very strong wind on the backside of the system and that there likely would be. And indeed, now you've got winds gusting to 55 at Orlando Executive. Downtown, gusting to 49. Kissimmee was just 61. And then Daytona Beach, man, with that wind coming in off the water, now gusting to 83 miles per hour. So it is still a very healthy storm, still entirely capable of dropping trees and causing some structural damage. There is that little band right there. You see that feature that's coming from Palm Coast down through Orlando. That is slowly going to make its way eastward over the next couple of hours here. And so eventually by, say, 5 to 6 o'clock in the morning, that ends up along the Space Coast and farther north, and things do begin to improve there in the Orlando metro area. We've been looking at a very serious rain threat as well. There you see the swath of several inches of rain in the last 12 hours, as much as a foot, and just incredible reports of flooding here. This is a hospital. HCA Largo was closed and evacuated because of the flooding there. That's near Clearwater. Also a report of water chest deep at the Holiday Inn in Plant City. I'm sure there are many, many more incidents like that, Ray, across that region. We're just not hearing about them yet. Yeah. But I'm sure there's been a lot of that.
Yeah, that's a danger at night, too. You get a lot of this flooding. And for those who didn't leave, you got water coming into businesses and homes. Got a report, too, of waist-deep water in some homes there, too. So, yeah, very heavy rainfall, and that rain continues to be pushing away and diminishing and moving on off toward the east. Let's get you caught up on now what we know this hour. Milton is a deadly storm. The St. Lucie County Sheriff says there has been a, quote, loss of life after a tornado in the Spanish Lakes community. At this hour, nearly 3 million customers across Florida are without power. Officials in Tampa are asking people to not walk out into receding water and to wait for an all clear from recovery teams before venturing out. Listen to your emergency managers, your local officials, even if the rain ends and the wind calms. Certainly you don't know what's out there, and especially if you get into the water, you never know what that could bring. So stay put till they tell you not to stay put. All right, we're adding up power outages. That's because of the wind and the rain that's been continuing to pound central, north central Florida. Now, some of those strongest winds, as we have seen going through Orlando now, but gusts have been to 80 plus miles per hour around Daytona Beach. Power's been going out, and it continues to see these numbers climb. Approaching, now we are over 3 million customers, all right, with that last kind of surge of wind going through Orlando. And made kind of an observation. You had a couple of 10,000 going out here just before 10 a.m. That's when we started getting some of our first tornado warnings. Same thing into the early afternoon. And then we really ramped it up here when we got around and after landfall, which was 8:30 p.m. Eastern time around Siesta Key. So those numbers now continuing to go up, and now we are over 3 million customers without power here in the state of Florida. Obviously, right around the center, pretty close to it's where most of those power outages are. A lot of these also from the wind and some from the severe weather, especially over here on the East Coast. But notice even down to Miami-Dade and parts of the Upper Keys, we do have at least reports of a few thousand customers without power. And I'd imagine those numbers will continue to go up here at least over the next several hours. And then we'll see the hurricane move back out over open water in the Atlantic. But there's still tropical storm force winds. Could be with us with gusts right on through the nighttime hours tonight, but probably waning a bit as we get into the afternoon. Rain slowly starting to wind down. Notice there's no more flash flood emergencies, but that doesn't mean there's no flooding going on. All right, it just means the threat for the flooding has now kind of peaked. So there's still water into businesses and homes, and there's plenty of standing water all around this area now, most likely up in here with our flash flood warnings, which do cover the areas like Orlando. And again, with our power outages, seeing the most right around where that center came on. But some of these, Carl, are related to what was a fairly substantial tornado outbreak.
Well, Milton made landfall near Siesta Key, Florida as a Category 3 hurricane about 8:30 on Wednesday night. Meteorologist Jim Cantori shows us the scene just 50 miles south in Charlotte Harbor.
Charlotte Harbor is absolutely a washtub out there. The wave action in the water coming up with this southwest feed. It's going to just come right up to an apex like this. All right, and that means it has no place to go but up and in this garage. Hurricane Milton on final approach into the west central Florida coastline. It's less than 50 miles offshore now as the crow flies. I'm in Charlotte Harbor right now, literally standing in Charlotte Harbor, which has taken over the parking area here at the Sunseeker in Port Charlotte. The water is still coming up. We are where we were with Helene right now with the storm surge, and it is still coming up. You can see the wind coming. Oh, there goes power flash right there. That's the first time we've had one of those. So we're still getting strong tropical storm force as we have been for the last hour. It is completely dark now. It is completely dark now here where I am. Okay, so we're on a generator backup, which is powering some of these lights. But we've lost power. You can see we're surrounded by water. And the big question is, how quick does this wind come down enough so that the harbor can go back out? Kev, would you hold this? Oh, Fred, did you get that? We may have lost a little bit of the wind, and it may be coming around a little bit from a different direction, but you can see how it's still being funneled right through this area, and the waves and the swirls in the water.
A lot of very serious storm surge flooding, and I'm sure we're going to hear about a lot more from that section of the coastline. Let's take a look at the model and show you how this is going to go down over the next few hours here. So the center of circulation starting to move offshore. We've still got this strong band on the back side of the system producing very strong wind in Daytona. In Orlando, that's going to continue to be in place for the next few hours right along the east central part of the coast there, the northeast coast, a surge threat as well with those winds coming in out of the northeast. You notice that most of the precip will have moved out of central Florida by that time. Still getting some heavy rain and some onshore wind even at sun up there, northeast Florida. And then finally, the storm begins to move along. Still some gusty wind in the wake of it, though. We've seen some really significant storm surge flooding in some areas, and we're still at 4 feet in Fort Myers, even though the center of the storm is on the other side of the state. Still an onshore flow. It's going to take a little while for that water to go down. And we don't even know completely what has happened between Fort Myers and the Tampa area, just because there aren't as many reporting gauges there. So it's probably pretty bad around Sarasota. We got a report of 10 feet of storm surge near Sarasota, and I'm sure that we're going to be hearing about some really significant damage in that area. Looking at the current storm surge potential map, 3 to 5 feet, that's the thing to really pay attention to going forward. We've got an ongoing threat here, of course, as well. But this is going to be a real issue as those northeast winds continue to pick up and move into the northeastern part of the state of Florida. It's going to continue to be a real issue in that area. So here's the wind forecast. And again, the center of circulation moves offshore. Winds gusting 60 miles per hour even into tomorrow morning in Orlando. And then here you see as the storm moves offshore, things really do begin to improve. But we've still got a gusty, day ahead for a lot of Florida, even as the storm is going to be pulling away. Well, we want to get back out to our Justin Michaels. He is live in Orlando. He's been following the wind, which has gotten much, much stronger. There, Justin, as promised, we knew that there was a lot of strong wind. We didn't know exactly how strong it was because we didn't have any observations, but we knew that there had been many reports of strong wind on the backside of this storm.
Definitely, Carl. Man, I'll tell you what, the wind has really, really picked up here in downtown Orlando. This is certainly the worst we have experienced. It's that stinging rain. Oh, that's a big gust right there. That's a big gust. That might be the biggest one yet that we've experienced. So this is not the time to be going outside. I have donned my helmet only because of caution. We have seen some things flying around, and it certainly is the only way to stay safe. In fact, I am going to step forward a little bit and get out of this just for a minute. Get out of this just, I'll tell you, take you off your feet. This is why you don't want to be going outside. Do we still have connection? I'm sorry. Do we still, Keisha, are you still there? Okay, 1 minute. Thank you. Sorry, it was very difficult to hear back there. So, yes, as of right now, certainly the worst wind we have experienced with Milton coming through Orlando. As you can see, though, the power in downtown is still on, even though we have surpassed the 3 million customers without power across the state of Florida. Nothing to say the power may not go out here, but the good news here in downtown Orlando is, take note, you don't see power lines anywhere because they're all underground. Certainly a great example as to why, if infrastructure is put underground, it can certainly maintain the integrity of that infrastructure when it comes to power and power outages. Even during a hurricane, you can see that downtown Orlando does have power. We're still checking out some of the possibility for flooding in the area, and we will keep you up to date on that. We do know that there are some places that have flooded in and around the Orlando area. The Weather Channel will have more live coverage of Milton coming up right after this short break as the storm pushes across Florida. We do appreciate you staying with us live here on the Weather Channel. I'm Justin Michaels, and the winds are really continuing to whip through Orlando, Florida. Some of these gusts will certainly take you off your feet, and I have experienced that multiple times. One, I was talking to our security guy. Dave thought I was going down, and I thought I was too. Did you guys see what that was? So I'm actually going to get out of this wind a little bit. I've got my helmet on for good reason, and I just heard some, I'm not exactly sure what that was blowing behind me, but we heard something break free. Oh, I see what it was. Austin Anderson behind the lens. Take note to the street marker sign. Do you see the right arrows are red, and you can see the street marker sign? That should say Orange Ave. It just blew away. So yes, things are starting to fly around. A good example of what it should look like. Look over here at South Street. In Orlando, they keep those lit, and it looks like the street marker that is backlit must have just let go. It's now gone. So again, another reason we wear these helmets. I know we might pay the price for them on social media, but it's important to do so because I care about my brain and my head. So definitely, if you're going out today in Orlando, later today, you probably can certainly do that. Right now is not a good time to do that. And in fact, in between live shots, we're taking safe haven behind a building and behind a wall that is totally protected. You don't even feel a light breeze, much less a gust of wind back there. Flooding is also becoming an issue around the area. We have part of our team, Melody Taylor, out looking around because we understand there was some flooding in some apartment buildings not far from where we're standing. So she's checking that out right now because flooding was always likely going to be an issue here. Orlando will flood with an afternoon rain shower. So it's not surprising that there would be flooding during a hurricane. And as Milton pushes across the state, it certainly has dumped a lot of rain. More than 5.5 inches are some of the readings in downtown Orlando out at the executive airport. So it's not surprising there might be flooding. The lake levels are very high right now. They started off very low because they dropped those levels. They've raised them back up again, Carl, because of the amount of rain that has fallen, funneling into all those lakes. Carl, again, actually, so we're going to go back to Ray. I will tell you, Ray, the winds are not letting up. If anything, they've probably gotten a little bit stronger over the last half hour to 45 minutes. Ray, into you.
All right, Justin, I do have one question for you. You mentioned how they drain those lakes. Do you actually know where they send that water to? I mean, where does it actually go, and how does that not become a problem for where they send it to? Do you have any idea? I'm curious myself.
Yeah. So what I understand is obviously some of the lakes have higher walls or higher banks than others, and they can basically distribute the water how they need to into lakes that may be, the shallower lakes can go into the deeper lakes and so on and so forth. So it's an interesting system how they can really move the lakes around as they need. The Lake Eola, which is the one at the center of the city, they dropped that thing all the way down to the lake bed. You could have walked on it if you wanted to, dry lake bed. I will tell you, if you were watching us a couple hours ago, you would have seen it's already coming over that bank already. So it's amazing the system they have here. They can raise and lower them at their will. It does take time. It's not an instantaneous thing. It took days for that lake to get down to where they needed it to be. But it's a remarkable system for they can ideally protect their downtown area, and they certainly did that so far during this storm. Ray, into you.
All right, Justin, thanks. Yeah, it was pretty interesting. And Justin Michaels there in Orlando as we're starting to see some of the strongest winds for him push on through. All right, you can see it and you can hear it. The wind, and there you're seeing it. The roof of Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg. Home of the Tampa Bay Rays. Took a severe hit from Hurricane Milton, as you can see here. I'd say that's pretty severe, ripping the roof right off this large portion of the dome roof. Blown away overnight, the baseball field had been lined with cots for out-of-town power crews and first responders to sleep on while they're here helping with Milton. Unfortunately, no injuries, or fortunately, no injuries reported, and unfortunately, obviously, that will not be anywhere where anybody is staying probably anytime soon. All right, now here is the latest on Milton. 4 a.m. update from the Hurricane Center. 85-mile-per-hour Cat 1 storm, pressure at 977 millibars, moving now northeast at 18, center 10 miles northwest of Cape Canaveral, Florida, and starting to move away. By sunrise, the center is probably out over the western Atlantic. Next update coming in at the top of the hour. Flood warnings left over now, continuing to push and get kind of chipped away at back toward the west, but still flooding going on. Just because you're not in a warning doesn't mean you're out of danger. Flash flood warnings meaning more imminent or continues to occur in and around places like Daytona Beach. But look at this as you get near Lakeland and Claremont, even Orlando, you're starting to come out of some of your heaviest rainfall. But some of the totals now over a foot in spots just east of Tampa and north of Lakeland, coming in with just over 12 inches, 12 and a half. Accumulation around St. Pete, 11.5. Did see some higher totals in this area, up to 17 inches of rain in some spots. Luckily here, over the next few hours, we're starting to see the rain taper off, even on down toward the south, where the radar seems to be out, but not much rain left.
Truly an extraordinary level of wind is whipping through Orlando, Florida right now. I'm Justin Michaels. We're going to keep you updated on that condition here in Orlando because this is truly the worst wind we have seen. Some of the gusts absolutely take me off my feet, and it has been really, really challenging. It's a little calm right now. I'll take advantage of it while I can. But I will tell you, this is not the time you want to be going out unless you absolutely need to. We have seen some first responders come through this morning, fire trucks, ambulances and such, police cars, but ideally those are the only people who should be out. We have also seen a few cars go through. Not sure where those people may be going. Of course, they may have essential jobs like doctors, nurses. We understand you need to get to where you're going. But by and large, if you can, you really want to stay home until Milton has moved on, is in the history books. Let that sucker get out of here so we don't have to worry about it anymore, and people can really start taking stock of the issues that the storm created. This storm has turned deadly. The worst thing we can ever tell you about any weather of any kind is when it takes somebody's life, and the storm certainly did do that already. Of course, assessments will need to go on over on the coast, on the west coast in particular, but also the east coast. Storm surge flooding has been an issue and will remain an issue until that water can recede. And of course, when storm surge comes in, it also destroys properties, changes lives forever. And we understand Siesta Key down near Sarasota, Florida, is certainly an area that will be the focal point of disaster recovery among so many other parts of the coast. Here in Orlando, remember, many people on the coast who were evacuating, they evacuated here. This is where people were coming to, Carl. So people are certainly waking up in many parts of central Florida without power this morning. Carl, we continue to see those massive blasts of light in the sky, orange colors, red colors, but also blue and pink and red and purple colors. So power outages are certainly presenting across the area. And here in downtown Orlando, though, Paul, the good news is power infrastructure by and large is underground, Carl, so that's a good thing. But in the county and other parts of this central Florida area, it isn't. And we're seeing major power outages. Carl, I think at last check, it's well over 3 million customers right now. Carl, into you.
Justin, just amazing how these things can stay so powerful for such a long period of time. And we are indeed seeing a lot of evidence now of that really strong wind all across east central parts and northeastern parts of Florida. Let's take a look at the radar. The center of circulation is now right about in there, so it's starting to work offshore once again. It made it all the way to the east coast as a hurricane. And there you see the current winds gusting now to 41 miles per hour at Patrick Air Force Base. We were not able to track the winds as effectively as they moved between Tampa and Orlando because a lot of these stations went down. They got knocked out for one reason or another. But you see now that we're getting the wind into the Orlando area. Winds now gusting to 67 in Sanford, 62 at Orlando Executive. Now 83 miles per hour Daytona Beach. So indeed, on the backside of the circulation, this banding here is just as it was on the west coast of Florida, proving to be vigorous in terms of the wind and also the heavy rain. And the model showing that this strong wind is going to continue to be in Orlando for at least the next hour or so. May be that by the time we get between 5 and 6, that the strongest of winds starts to move a little farther east and more towards the coast there, and then between 6 and 7 actually does begin to work offshore. So it looks like as we get towards sunup, Ray, things are going to begin to improve in Orlando, if not sooner.
All right, Carl, thanks. Hurricane Milton's powerful winds caused this crane collapse, falling into the building there. This is in St. Petersburg, causing some major damage to that building. Peak winds gusted in this area at about 101 miles per hour. And as you can see, obviously the brick and the mortar there coming down along with the crane, and I didn't heard of any reports of injuries, thank goodness for that. But strong winds in excess of 100 miles per hour, and that's actually what you end up with. And you end up with this, power outages. And some of them did start late morning, early afternoon. This most likely more a function of the tornado outbreak that began. And then we kind of had this crescendo here as we watched landfall come in about 8:30 Eastern time. So right about in there, notice the numbers going up. And now we are over 3 million customers without power. So that's quite a few, because you consider one customer, one household, and most of them obviously right in the area where we saw in the center come on shore, but some also out through the outer edges of where some of the stronger winds were and where some of that severe weather was. The center, as we go through this morning, of the strongest winds continue to push offshore. Some of the gusts still could be to hurricane force early. Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Milton. We're going to jump in here and talk about the home of Tampa Bay Rays taking a direct hit from Milton. The roof getting torn off in the fierce winds. WTSP reporter Miranda Parnell gives us a look at the damage after Milton finally moved out.
We're in downtown St. Petersburg in front of Tropicana Field, and we know that this is not just a landmark for the St. Pete area. It's for the entire Tampa Bay area. It's something you can see from such a far off distance. But I want to move out of the way so you can take a look behind me and look at this structure right now. Tropicana Field, the top blown completely off, just showing the power of that storm as Hurricane Milton moved through our area. And we know that this is not the only place that saw damage. First responders are still trying to assess different areas in our community, and they are still working to reach people who are trapped in their homes. But they're asking folks to stay off the roadways until further notice. We can tell you, as we've been moving about this morning, there's been debris everywhere, trees down. They say that there are power lines that are down. So they're asking folks to stay off the roadways because it's still dangerous. We know that in Treasure Island, they said that they saw winds reach over 100 miles per hour throughout the night, and they've already seen 13 inches of rain. That was just a few minutes ago. So first responders are still working to assess what happened out here. But again, Tropicana Field is just an example of the power of that storm. We're going to continue to look around our area and assess the situation ourselves. Reporting in downtown St. Petersburg, Miranda Parnell, 10 Tampa Bay, reporting for the Weather Channel.
And just one element of Milton was the wind. The other was the rainfall, and that rain came down hard and fast in plenty of places. St. Petersburg, right now the leader, right, one of the things you don't want to lead in, right? Flooding rainfall, 17.24 inches. Clearwater Beach coming in at 14 or just over 14, Baskin at 13, Seminole about 10, and also Pinellas Park also at about 10 inches. So it was really right in this area in pink where we saw some of the heaviest rain, some of those totals close to 1.5 feet in spots. Got to imagine somebody's going to be close to 1.5 feet, maybe a little bit more. And the flood watches, all right? So the watches mean the potential for flooding when you get warnings or advisories or even flash flood emergencies. What we had down here near Tampa and St. Pete, that's when you need to take action. And just because your warnings have gone away and the flash flood emergency has gone away here doesn't mean there's not still flooding going on. Most of the new flooding further northeast of Orlando and Daytona Beach, where at this point some of the heaviest rain is coming down. The radar showing that, also showing the eastern side of the center merging now out over the western Atlantic and start to pull away as the evolution here of the storm coming in, like you said, right around 8:30 as a Cat 3 and weakening, pushing onshore, continuing to weaken as it does, but still strong winds, seen some 80-plus mile-per-hour gusts even on the East Coast. around Daytona Beach. And as we had said, not only is the center pulling away, so there's this rainfall too. So this is good news. Not that we're not going to have some leftover showers on the backside, but it's really been loaded to the north and the northwest. So really that quadrant of the hurricane and eventually tropical storm, it seems to be where we've had some of the heaviest rain, and believe it or not, some of the stronger winds too. Notice, and usually you'd say with a hurricane, it is the northeast quadrant where some of the strongest winds are, but we are void of even precipitation. Not saying the winds aren't gusting, but we've seen some of the strongest here back on the backside where, as I just mentioned, I think I saw 84 miles per hour at Daytona Beach. So the winds have been ripping and the rain's adding up. And we also got water coming in from the Atlantic and a surge threat here too. So here's your warning, right? So this is where we say you take action, right? Flash flood warning, Orange, Seminole, and Volusia counties, Daytona Beach in that, Orlando's in that. But notice too, even in Orlando, you're seeing your rain taper off. Heavier rainfall right around Daytona Beach on I-95 soon over the next few hours. We should see that start to fade away a bit. Flagler, Marion, and Putnam counties, this is radar indicated flash flood warning. Again, if you are in this area, flooding imminent or is occurring. But again, you're seeing the rain and some of the heaviest rain just offshore, trying to get onshore, but it looks like it's having a tendency to weaken here as it runs into the shoreline. But as we go through and take a look further west, you notice that the rain's diminishing on the backside. To the south, there's hardly anything. Doesn't mean you're not going to get any showers, but there will be some. But the worst will be further north. The winds are gusting right now. Orlando to 55, Sanford to 67 now. And there you go. Look at Daytona Beach now, has gusted to 87 miles per hour. So windy, rainy over the next few hours, but continue to see the winds calm down as we get in and around places like Tampa and St. Pete. Carl?
Well, we have some new video in from Daytona Beach, Florida. Milton's winds blasting the area. This is a spot where we have been consistently seeing winds gusting up and over 70 miles per hour. And in fact, within the last hour, gusting over 80 miles per hour. You know, part of what's happening here is you've got an easterly wind that is coming off the ocean, so there's no friction. And the result is that you get a much stronger wind than you would get if it was coming from an area that was over land. So here you see the current advisory on the hurricane. It is now a Category 1, 85 mile per hour storm, and it is moving towards the northeast at 18 miles per hour. So it has made its way all the way across the state of Florida as a hurricane. It is now 10 miles to the northeast of Cape Canaveral, and so the center is now just offshore. So we will see lingering effects, mostly in terms of rain and wind in northeast Florida, and also surge along the northeast Florida coast, as well as into Georgia and parts of South Carolina. We'll talk more about all of that coming up in a few minutes.
I'll tell you what, the wind is certainly causing some problems here in downtown Orlando, Florida. You can see the traffic light arms have come down here at the intersection of Church and also Orange. Orange is bent, obviously going to have to be repaired. Church is down completely, and that is all done by the power of the wind. Extraordinary how intense the winds have gotten here just over the last few hours. I know Carl and Carl is currently watching, and Ray are watching the forecast because we've got about an hour left of this wind before it starts to taper off. So this is not the time you want to be going outside. This is the time you need to be certainly staying in. As far as any rain issues, we certainly have seen minor flooding around the area. Nothing that is impeding travel per se, maybe a little bit of flooding in certain intersections, but nothing that bad. But I will tell you, the story here in Orlando over the last hour and a half, 2 hours, has been the backside of Milton pushing through and bringing these extraordinary gusts of wind and sustained winds, probably 30, 40, maybe even to the 50-mile-per-hour range at times. I mean, you can hear it, you can feel it. It's an extraordinary amount of power from this storm going through Orlando, Florida. And the best, most visible example of that power we've seen so far is right here with these cross arms going down. We also have branches coming down all over the place. Have not seen trees down yet, but that doesn't mean they're not down. And of course, if trees come down, that means power lines oftentimes come down with them. Here in Orlando, the nice thing downtown, Ray, is the fact that the power lines are underground, which is probably the only reason where you look around, there is plenty of power everywhere. We haven't lost power downtown, but Ray, you know that that is a rarity as we go across Florida because more than 3 million customers are without power, many of them here in Central Florida. Ray, into you now.
Yeah, Justin, thanks. You know, and you see that signal that's come down, but the light is still on. Have you seen any other issues? Has there been any power that has gone out? I mean, at least around you. I mean, it looks like the winds are starting to really rip right now. Seems like some of the worst, if not pretty close to it.
Yes, we have seen. In fact, I'm going to step behind that. We have seen power outages around the area, especially when you get out downtown proper. Certainly. So again, this is an anomaly. Downtown Orlando is holding strong when it comes to the power, but I truly believe it is a testament to communities that decide and have the finances and choose to put their power lines underground. This is what you get. You have the staying power through something like this. We have seen the flashes of light in the sky, the arcing of lines, the blowing of transformers. We have seen that, but not downtown. Downtown seems to be staying just fine right now, Ray. And to your point, I mean, looking at the crossing arm here, I mean, hey, it's a green light if you can get through it. Red light over here on Orange Ave. But that Orange Ave arm, Ray, looks like it's even gone down since we've been standing here. I can't imagine that has too much more strength to go before it comes down as well. Ray, into you.
All right, thank you, Justin Michaels, out in downtown Orlando, seeing some of the worst conditions from Milton as we speak. And probably not going to be too much longer there. But let's jump to a couple of photos now after the storm in Hillsborough County early this morning. First, we're here in Brandon. This is just east of Tampa. You can see this large tree has come down alongside and across Bloomingdale Road near Kings Avenue, taking out the power. Also an example of flash flooding and why you should never drive into high water. As you can see there, flooding has caused the water to go up to the wheel wells in that car, and I can't tell if that car stalled, if there was anybody in it. But turn around, don't drown. At least at this point, there is no reason why in some of these areas you should decide to venture out until your local officials tell you it's okay to venture out. And at this point, in some of the areas hardest hit, it's not okay. All right, so what's left here now? Well, we've got the 5 a.m. update, and we've got a Category 1 storm with winds estimated at 85 miles per hour. Now, we've seen that with some of the gusts, 84 at Daytona Beach, but it's moving northeast at 18, so it picked up another mile per hour in forward speed. The center to the northeast of Cape Canaveral, Florida, off to the northeast. So, we're seeing the center now just about emerging and getting back out over the open waters of the Atlantic Ocean. And as it does, and obviously the impacts will become less and less, but still some heavy rain and some surge flooding up the coast, and some of the warnings for some of that surge is actually, or are actually, further north up into even the beaches of South Carolina. But here you can see the heaviest rainfall with the flash flood warning. Does cover Orlando, but the rain is beginning to lessen there. Little bit more of a threat as you go a little further north here, as you get up near Daytona Beach, Orange, Seminole, Volusia counties. Some heavy rain and some radar and gauge indicated flooding here. I don't think we're going to see the 17-inch totals, which were some of the highs that have come in. But look at this, 11.5, maybe a little bit more. So we may see some 1-foot totals, but do we get 1.5 or 18 inches of rain? Probably not. But this is the area, though, that's seeing that heaviest rainfall, and actually well forecast. This was forecast to be where the heaviest rain was, over a foot in many spots, and it looks like some of the higher totals are going to come in around a foot to about 17 plus inches in and around Tampa Bay. The power outages continue to climb. As of this point, we've got just over 3 million customers without power.
The Weather Channel continues live around-the-clock coverage of Hurricane Milton. I'm Justin Michaels. This is Orlando, Florida, where we are getting some of the worst winds we have seen from this storm push through as the backside of the storm is now coming through here, the city beautiful Orlando, Florida. You can see the intersection of Church and Orange. The arms are down that hold up the stoplights, and that is a major issue. In fact, the Orange Street one is getting lower and lower every single time we look at it. So Orange Avenue and Church Streets, this intersection essentially is shut down right now. And the concern is over the next couple minutes, next hour, as these winds persist, could we have one of these break? That could certainly be an issue. And of course, if they do break, what we're going to have are exposed power lines, very powerful power lines. So just be very careful as you're moving around here in downtown Orlando right now, because there are dangers that are presenting. Another issue we're seeing, branches are coming down. The wind is strong enough that it's bringing branches down, and you have to believe that in downtown Orlando, though you see power here right now, outside of Orlando proper, you don't, because here, all the power lines are underground. The power has been stable here all night long, regardless of wind. Out in the county and just outside of the city limits, it's a very different story. And right now, power outages are more than 3 million customers across the state of Florida. This has been a major hit to the power infrastructure for so many different power companies. But the good news we can report, and it's been very, very interesting all night long, that despite all the power issues across the state, Orlando has not even seen the lights flicker in downtown Orlando. That's not to say we haven't seen the bright flashes of orange and red and purple and blue from arcing power lines and transformers blowing far from where we are. We have seen that. But as you can see, I don't care what direction in which you look, there is power in downtown Orlando. But our branches this size are the issue out in the county and in places where those lines are suspended above, up on power poles. These come down, they take power lines with them. So please be extremely careful as you move around. We have seen gusts approaching hurricane force this morning here in the greater Orlando area. We've also seen a lot of rain overnight, but the good news is, by and large, across the area, flooding has not been a huge issue in this part of the state. Over on the coast, a very different issue with the storm surge flooding that has been absolutely catastrophic.